The book of Leviticus, chapter 13, from the Sunday School Bible, 1445 BC. Copyright, the Sunday School Bible, LLC, 2025. All rights reserved. Laws about leprosy or skin diseases on people. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "When a person's skin has a rising, scab, or bright spot, and it is in the skin of the flesh, like the plague of leprosy, then the person will be brought to Aaron the priest, or to one of Aaron's sons who is a priest." Note, although the King James Version uses the terms leper and leprosy in Leviticus chapter 13, the Hebrew Bible, or Masoretic text, uses the word tzara'at, which refers to a broad range of impure conditions, including human skin diseases, fungal growths, and mold or mildew on clothing and in houses. To help the reader understand the wider meaning, the SSB will replace the word leprosy with terms like skin disease, mold, and or mildew. End of note. The Lord continued speaking to Moses and Aaron. The priest will look at the disease on the skin of the flesh. When the hair in the disease has turned white and the disease in sight is deeper than the skin of the flesh, it is a skin disease. The priest will look at the person and pronounce the person unclean. If the bright spot is white on the skin of the person's flesh and is not deeper than the skin, and the hair thereof has not turned white, then the priest will quarantine the person who has the skin disease for 7 days. The priest will re-examine the person on the 7th day. If the skin disease in the priest's sight has remained the same, and the skin disease has not spread on the skin, then the priest will quarantine the person for 7 more days. The priest will re-examine the person again 7 days later. If the skin disease is somewhat dark and the skin disease has not spread on the skin, the priest will pronounce the person clean. It is only a scab, and the person will wash their clothes and be clean. But if the scab spreads further over the skin after the priest has already examined the person and was declared clean, the person must be re-examined by the priest. If the priest sees that the scab has spread on the skin, then the priest will pronounce the person unclean. It is a skin disease. When the skin disease is on a person, then the person will be brought to the priest. The priest will re-examine the person. If the rising on the skin is white, it has turned the hair white, and there is a spot of raw flesh rising from the skin, it is a chronic skin disease on the skin of the flesh. The priest will pronounce the person unclean and will not quarantine the person because the person is already unclean. If the skin disease breaks out all over the skin and the skin disease covers all of the person's body, from their head to their feet, wheresoever the priest looks, then the priest will consider if the skin disease has covered all of the person's flesh, the priest will pronounce the person who has the skin disease clean. It has all turned white, so the person is clean. But when raw flesh appears on the person will be unclean. The priest will examine the raw flesh and pronounce the person unclean, because the raw flesh is unclean. It is a skin disease. Or if the raw flesh turns again and changes to white, the person will go to the priest. The priest will examine the person, and if the skin disease has turned to white, then the priest will pronounce the person who has the skin disease clean. The person is clean. Also, if there was a boil on the flesh and it has healed, but in its place there is a white rising or a bright spot, white and somewhat reddish, and it is shown to the priest. If, when the priest examines it, it is lower than the skin, and the hair thereof has turned white, the priest will pronounce the person unclean. It is a skin disease, broken out of the boil. But if the priest examines it, and there are no white hairs therein, and if it is not lower than the skin, but is somewhat dark, then the priest will quarantine the person for 7 days. If it spreads over the skin, then the priest will pronounce the person unclean. It is a skin disease. But if the bright spot stays in place and does not spread, it is a burning boil, and the priest will pronounce the person clean. Or if there is any flesh on the skin whereof there is a hot burning, and the flesh that burns has a white bright spot, somewhat reddish or white, then the priest will examine it, and if the hair in the bright spot has turned white, and it is deeper than the skin, it is a leprosy broken out of the burning. The priest will pronounce the person unclean because it is a skin disease. But if the priest examines it and there is no white hair in the bright spot, and it is not lower than the other skin, but it is somewhat dark, the priest will quarantine the person for 7 days. The priest will examine the person 7 days later, and if it has spread over the skin, then the priest will pronounce the person unclean. It is a skin disease. If the bright spot stays in place and does not spread over the skin, but it is somewhat dark, then it is swelling from the burning, and the priest will pronounce the person clean, because it is an inflammation from the burning. If a man or woman has a skin disease on the head or the beard, then the priest will examine the plague, and if it is seen to be deeper than the skin, and there are thin yellow hairs in it, the priest will pronounce the person unclean, because it is a dry scall, a skin disease on the head or beard. If the priest examines the skin disease of the scalding, and it is seen to be no deeper than the skin, and there are no black hairs in it, then the priest will quarantine the person who has the skin disease of the scaling for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest will examine the skin disease, and if the scaling has not spread, there is no yellow hair in it, and the scaling is not seen to be deeper than the skin, the person will be shaved, but the person will not shave the scaling. The priest will quarantine the person who has the scaling for 7 more days. On the 7th day, the priest will re-examine the scaling, and if the scaling has not spread on the skin and is seen to be no deeper than the skin, the priest will pronounce the person clean, and the person will wash their clothes and be clean. But if the scaling spreads over the skin after the person's cleansing, then the priest will examine the person, and if the scaling has spread on the skin, the priest will not look for yellow hair. The person is unclean. But if the priest determines the scaling has not spread, and the black hair has grown therein, the scaling is healed, and the person is clean. The priest will pronounce the person clean. If a man or a woman has on the skin of their flesh bright spots or white bright spots, then the priest will examine it, and if the bright spots on the skin of the flesh are darkish white, it is a freckled spot that grows on the skin, and the person is clean. The male whose hair has fallen off his head, this man is bald, and this man is clean. The male whose hair has fallen off from the part of his head toward his face, this man is bald on the forehead, and this man is clean. If in the bald head or bald forehead there is a white reddish sore, it is a skin disease that has sprung up in the man's bald head or the man's bald forehead. Then the priest will examine it, and if the rising of the sore is white reddish in his bald head or in his bald forehead, as the skin disease appears on the skin of the flesh, he is a man with a skin disease, and he is unclean. The priest will pronounce the man utterly unclean. His plague is on his head. The person who has the skin disease will tear their clothes, maintain a bare head, put a covering on their upper lip, and will cry out loud, "Unclean, unclean." Every day that the skin disease is on a person, they will be defiled, they will be unclean, and they will live alone in a residence outside the camp. Laws about leprosy, mildew, and fungus on clothing. The Lord continued speaking to Moses and Aaron. If a person's garment also has mildew or fungal growth on it, whether it is a wool or a linen garment, whether it is in the vertical threads, whether it is in the horizontal threads, whether it is made from linen, whether it is made from wool, whether it is made from a skin, like leather, or whether it is made from anything made from skin, it is a mildew or fungal growth, and will be shown to the priest if the plague is greenish or reddish, and in the garment or in the skin, either in the vertical threads or in the horizontal threads, or in anything made with skin. The priest will examine the mildew or fungal growth and quarantine the person who has the mildew or fungal growth for 7 days. The priest will re-examine the mildew or fungal growth on the 7th day. If the mildew or fungal growth has spread in the garment, either in the vertical thread or in the horizontal thread, or on the skin, or in any work that is made of skin, the growth is an outbreak of mildew or fungus, and it is unclean. The priest will therefore burn that garment, whether the vertical thread or the horizontal thread, or whether it's made from wool or made from linen, or anything of skin, wherein the mildew or fungal growth is, because the mildew or fungal growth is spreading, and it will be burned in fire. If, after the priest's examination, he determines the mildew or fungal growth has not spread in the garment, either in the vertical thread or in the horizontal thread, or in anything of skin, the priest will command that they wash the thing wherein the mildew or fungal growth is, and the person will be quarantined for 7 more days. The priest will re-examine the mildew or fungal growth after the garment has been washed, and if the plague has not changed its color, and the mildew or fungal growth has not spread, then it is unclean. You will burn the garment in the fire. It has penetrated deeply into the fabric, whether it is on the inside or the outside. If, after the priest's examination, he determines the mildew or fungal growth on the garment is somewhat dark after it has been washed, then the priest will tear it out of the garment, or out of the skin, or out of the vertical thread, or out of the horizontal thread. If the mildew or fungal growth still appears on the garment, either in the vertical thread or the horizontal thread, or anything of leather, the mildew or fungal growth is spreading, and you will burn with fire the area of the garment wherein the plague is. After you have washed the garment, whether it was in the vertical thread or the horizontal thread, or in something made from leather, if the mildew or fungal growth is no longer on the garment, then the garment will be washed a second time and will be clean. This is the law of the plague of leprosy, meaning mildew or fungal growth, in a garment made of wool or linen, either in a vertical thread, in a horizontal thread, anything of leather, to pronounce it clean or to pronounce it unclean.